Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart for those of you that are new. And today I'll be breaking down this quick 4-game NBA slate here for Saturday night on DraftKings. Talking through my favorite plays, who I like, who I don't like, game by game breakdown, all that good stuff in this video. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And let's get right into it. So we did have some big news that kind of came out this morning with the New York Knicks. They traded RJ Barrett and they traded Emmanuel quickly to the Raptors for OG Anunoby and Malachi Flynn and Precious Achua. So with that trade happening, the Knicks are going to be very shorthanded because they're going to have to pass their physicals. So it's not like they get traded right away and we're able to play them. And once again, they're not even in the player pool. So jumping into the odds here real quick, as we can see for the Knicks and Pacers, 4.5 point spread right now, 248.5 game total. So great game total to target. Sixers, Bulls, 1 point spread, 224. I think it's another great game total to target. I mean, the game total overall is not, let me rephrase that, not the best game total, but more so just the pieces from that game. There are some good pieces to get just because they're both still very shorthanded, with Vooch being out still, with Zach being out on the Bulls side, and then on the 76ers, obviously Embiid still out. For the Lakers, Timberwolves, 5 point spread, 225.5. And then Mavs, Warriors, 4.5 point spread, 242 game total there. So that's another very interesting game total to look at and target. So as I mentioned, Knicks are very shorthanded. So I think the starting lineup we'll see for tonight will be Brunson, Randall, obviously we know that. Hartenstein, so there's 3, we know that so far. I would assume they move Josh Hart into the starting lineup and maybe DiVincenzo. They could run that starting lineup out there, and then off the bench, we'll see some Taj, we'll see some Grimes possibly if he's good to go. We'll see a little bit of McBride, I would assume, and maybe we get Evan Fournier. He's played 1 game so far this season. He's been at the end of the bench, but yeah, we're gonna get a lot of value here for the Knicks side. I'd assume. Brunson, Randall, they're already been playing close to, as many minutes as they can. They're going to be pushing 40 minutes, I would assume, in this game here. So they both look great here. Game environment, fantastic. Indiana, the matchup, it's fantastic. So really, really like Brunson and Randall tonight, as well as the rest of the team. Hartenstein, he's been pushing, 30 minutes the past few games, as you can see here. He looks really, really good there at 5,800. Same thing with Hart and DiVincenzo. Even if one of them starts and one of them comes off the bench, I think they're both going to be pushing for 30 minutes. They've kind of been up and down in terms of production, but now missing Emmanuel quickly, now missing RJ Barrett. There is a good amount of usage to go around. Obviously Randall and Brunson are going to pick up a decent chunk of that, but also, Hart, DiVincenzo, they're both going to be more aggressive offensively. They're going to need it, so they're going to need to step up. And off the bench, we're going to get guys like possibly Grimes. He could start. He'd be a little bit more aggressive. At the minimum price tag, he'd be a fine play. But also we could get guys like McBride, who has been, played sparingly throughout the season. Not the best, scorer, more so a defensive stopper, but 3,000 flat minimum price tag. If he knocks down a few shots, if he's going to be playing 15, 20 minutes, flat minimum price tag, he looks like a good value. Archie Diacono, a little bit better of a scorer, but a little bit better of a playmaker. Hasn't really played him too much this season, as you can see. One of those guys can go out there, score a few baskets, more so get, probably 8 assists, maybe a couple rebounds, a couple steals. Kind of one of those guys. Doesn't do a ton, but can, definitely stuff the stat sheet for a guy who's minimum price. So there's a lot to like here. One of those things we're going to have to wait and see what the lineup comes out to be for tonight. Obviously, it's the first game, so that's really nice for us, just so we can kind of plan around it. So I'll update you guys on my Twitter of how I'm going to be attacking it once we get that starting lineup news and who to expect to go to off the bench. But yeah, if we get news that Evan Fournier is going to be in the starting lineup or, going to be in the rotation off the bench, flat minimum price tag, a guy who's a really good shooter, really good scorer, I'd have a lot of interest there. So a lot to like here for the Knicks side. I wouldn't be surprised to at least play 3 Knicks, if not close to 4. You can even push for more depending on how you want to attack the slate. On the opposite side here, Halburn's just too cheap here. I know it's a 4-game slate, so there's a good amount of pay-up options, but we know the ceiling with him is massive. I kind of been on a little cold streak the past, since the beginning of December in terms of scoring, but we know the assists are there, and he can easily turn it on when he hits a shot. So absolutely love Halburn there. We'll throw him in the player pool. There's a lot to like there for the Knicks, so I'm not going to throw all of them in there, but just know there's a ton of like for the Knicks side. Miles Turner, I think it's going to be more so kind of one of those contrarian GPP options if he can stay out of foul trouble. Hield, he's been coming off the bench, been playing good minutes though, as you can see. He's been decently aggressive. I think he's a fine play at 5,900. Does have some interest to me, just because Bruce Brown is still out, and they've been starting Nembhard alongside Halburn. And Nembhard hasn't been the best. The minutes he did see mid-30s, 2 and 3 games ago, and then the last game was decently aggressive, kind of a little bit of a blowout. 4 of 13, did not shoot the best, did not play the best, still went for about 20 fantasy points. So I think he's a fine play at 5,200 there. If you're looking for a cheaper guard, who is point guard, shooting guard eligible. Smith has been getting the start the past 2 games. He's been pretty solid. So at 4,900, I do have interest in him if you're looking for a cheap forward that does have 30 plus upside. Mathurin, it's just one of those things that right there with the guards. Even with Brown out, Matherin's minutes haven't been the best. He's been coming off the bench. Same thing with Naismith coming off the bench. Minutes have been a little bit better compared to Mathurin. So as I said, the minutes are all over the place, all over the board for these guards and forwards. It's very annoying. You don't feel great about it. So based on what we have right now and kind of the past 2 games, I do really like. I think out of these wings, the best would be Smith and then Naismith and then Mathurin. McConnell hasn't really been seen a ton of minutes. You'd think you'd see more with kind of those guards being down, but they just haven't been playing them. Toppin's all over the board in terms of the minutes, as you can see there. So not a lot to like here for the wings, but there are some decent options. Moving on to Philly here versus Chicago. Once again for Philly, Embiid's out. So Maxey looks like a great spin-up play. Had a nice bounce-back game there. 42 real-life points, 55 bomb. Harris, still too cheap here, 7,200. He's going to be the secondary guy. He's going to be super aggressive, can rebound, can get assists, can also get those blocks and steals. Obviously, 7 stocks. Not really the norm for him. He can usually get maybe 1 or 2 a game. So, but I think he's still a great play there at 7,200 if you want a piece from this team. And I do think you're going to want at least one piece from this team just because there's a ton of usage to go around. Melton, he got priced up a little bit more here, and he had a very, very bad game, as you can see there. Just overall, DFS-wise, 23 fantasy points is not going to do it for you. But the good news is, played 36 minutes, shot it more than 10 times, and he has that upside with these steals there. And if he hits his shots, he could definitely score more. As we saw, previous 2 games, 35, 42 fantasy points. So I feel good going back to Melton there, just with the minutes and upside the usage. Same thing with Oubre. He's been bad the past 2 games. Kind of the minutes have been down a little bit. Not really sure why. I haven't been following them too closely to kind of know why he's been limited minutes-wise. Not really a ton of foul trouble, no injuries. So interesting to see there. He could be a sneaky GPP option, but once again, those minutes are risky. So I don't know if I'd go there. I'd obviously go with the safer option of Maxey, Melton, or Harris. They're all great options. Oubre's that okay option there in the mid range. Paul Reed, 5,700. Once again, I have a good amount of interest in him, but as you can see, minutes are kind of all over the board. A little bit of foul trouble risk with him, but if he can stay out of foul trouble and play close to 30 minutes, he does have massive upside. So I think he's a fine play. Mo Bamba backing up, Paul Reed, not playing a ton there, but they have been, Batum is back, so they've been putting Batum out there. 4,300, I think is an okay value. I do think I'd rather get to the Indiana, guys rather than Batum. Same thing with Morris. He's there. He's been playing a little bit more. Once again, I do think I'd rather get to the Indiana forwards if you're going to go for some value in that power forward, small forward range, the low 400s, or 4,000, excuse me. And then Pat Bev seen about 20-ish minutes. Nothing too crazy. A little bit of Robert Covington, but nothing too wild there. Excuse me. Moving on to the Bulls here. Once again, I think DeMar looks like a great option at the top. You would want a little bit more upside from him at 8,500 with no Zach, no Vooch, but I still think he's a solid GPP option. Same thing with Drummond. Only played 21 minutes. Kind of let people down there. He's super massive chalk, but still went for 16 rebounds. So if he can score, he's pretty much an automatic double-double. It just depends on how many minutes he's going to play if he stays out of foul trouble. So we saw the game before against Atlanta, went for almost a 70 bomb. So I think he's a fine play, not my favorite. Kobe White, once again, I have a ton of interest in him. I played him the past 2 games, and they've been the 2 worst games of the season so far with Zach being out and Vooch. Very frustrating stuff on my end there. 7,800, though, looks like a great play. He's going to be super aggressive, going to lead this team in terms of usage. So really like him. Pat Williams, I think, is a fine play there. Played 38 minutes, had his best game with those guys being out. But I think he's solid there in mid-range. Caruso, he should play solid minutes, 5,400. I think that's a good price tag on him. Io, hit or miss in terms of his production, but past 2 games, he's been really solid. So I don't mind going to him at 4,600. That's a pretty cheap price tag for a guard who's playing mid-30s minutes. Carter's also questionable, but it looks like he should be good to go. Does eat into Io's minutes a little bit. I think it's an okay value. I'd rather get to Io. They've been playing some Terry or a little bit there as well, but nothing too crazy. They're really just running DeRozan, Drummond, Pat Williams, Caruso, DeSumo, and a little bit of Carter and Taylor, and that's really it. It's not really going too far, into the bench there. So a lot to like there for Chicago. Moving on to the Lakers side here. For the Lakers, Anthony Davis, LeBron, questionable at the top, but they both should be good to go here. 10.2K, 9.8. Obviously, we know the offense runs through both of them, so they both look like great spend-up options. I think Anthony Davis is a little bit of a safer option. right now, but LeBron, as we know, has been going off this season so far. Reeves priced down a little bit still. I don't love the minutes there with him. He's been super efficient, but 6,800 for a guy who's playing not even 30 minutes the past few games. I don't think there's a need to get to him on this slate. Same thing with Russell, moved to the bench. Minutes have been, 18 to mid or 18 to 30. Does have a little bit of upside, but I just don't feel safe going to those guys. There's just way better options across the board. It's like, why not pay for a Melton who's going to be playing more minutes, have the same shot attempts as Reeves, or pay up a little bit more for a guy like Tobias Harris? Same thing. So it's like, there's really no need to get these guys unless you're trying to be super contrarian. And then the cheaper value, Prince, Hachimura, they're both there. I do like the minutes on Hachimura. He's kind of looking like the third option alongside Reeves off the bench there in terms of scoring. So he'd probably be the most interesting to me off the bench. And they are playing Vanderbilt. The minutes are slowly going up, as you can see here. So I think he's a solid value, 4,200. Moving on to Minnesota here. Big news is Carl Anthony Towns. He should be good to go, but it's one of those things, as you can see, the minutes haven't been the best on him the past two games. A little bit of blowout there against OKC. Dallas a little bit closer, but still foul trouble there. Have kind of been ruining him. But 8,100 for him, I think, is a solid price tag. And in 9.2, I do really like him. Gobert, always a solid GPP option in the mid-range. I never land on him, but he's a fine play. In terms of the rest of the team, they're just there. You really don't feel great landing on any of these guys. They don't have a ton of upside just because the offense is really just rolling through Edwards and Towns. And then, there is sometimes a third guy that does step up, but it's really hard to kind of pick that out of the bunch. Sometimes it is Naz Reid, but his minutes are all over the place, super foul prone. I do have a little bit of interest in Jaden Daniels just because he's playing a ton of minutes here, as you can see. At the beginning of the season, wasn't playing a ton of minutes, kind of over the place, but the past, 6 games, he's been playing 30 or more minutes, pretty much every single game. Not the best scorer, more so a defensive stopper, but as you can see, playing a ton of minutes, 5,000, I think is a solid option. And then moving on to the last game here, we have Dallas versus Golden State. Obviously, a great game environment here. So I wouldn't mind going to like a late night hammer approach here, especially if people are just going to load up on the first 3 games or the first 2. Then you could definitely get some pieces from this Dallas Golden State game that are very cheap. Luka, 11-7. He should be good to go. Hopefully, we'll have to see. If not, we're going to get that starting lineup of like Hardaway, Exum, Lively, Hardy, and probably Jones or Grant Williams. And then these, the best out of that group would probably be Hardaway, even though he's priced up, kind of scoring independent. Wouldn't love the price tag there on him. I do think there's better options. Exum would be there as well. Didn't play a ton of minutes there in that last game. Obviously, a little bit of blowout. They did kind of come back. So I think they'd be fine plays. I think the most interesting would be Lively. If you can stay out of foul trouble and see his normal minutes, but it's obviously a risky. Same thing with Jaden Hardy here. Just hasn't been the best in terms of his output this year with no Luka and no Kyrie, which was a little bit different last year, which he usually did a little bit better. Jones is there. Does have a little bit of upside, as you can see. 5,300. I think he's fine. Same thing with Grant Williams. He's fine there. Jones is probably the safer option. Seth, it's just you don't feel great landing on these Dallas guys. They're cheap, but they're just kind of there. And then Kyrie's questionable, but he's probably not going to play. Really just depends on Luka. If Luka's in, I think he's a fantastic option. If he's out, I have a little bit of interest in the Dallas guys, but I think there's just better options across the board. And if we're Golden State, we're getting one of the cheapest price tags we've seen on staff in years, if not the cheapest we've ever seen, as you can see here. So I don't mind buying low on Steph. He went 3 of 15. The last time that happened, as you saw, he went 2 of 12, and then when he put up almost a 50 bomb there, just hasn't been shooting the ball great. I do expect him to bounce back here versus Dallas. Could be one of those classic Steph nights where he goes for like 40 plus real life points. So good amount of interest in him as a spend up. Going to be very contrarian, probably pretty low owned. Klay Thompson coming in at a pretty cheap price tag as well. Minutes haven't been great, as you can see here, but he had a nice little stretch there of like 4 or 5 games where he was playing well. I've got amount of interest in Pods. He's playing, close to 30 minutes, if not a few more minutes. Has really good upside as well. So yeah, I think Pods is a very interesting play there in mid-range, 5,800. Very, very productive. Paul all the way down to 5,400. Very cheap. Has a little bit of upside. So I think these guys are just better plays compared to the Dallas guys in terms of upside. So I don't really think there's a need to get those Dallas wings unless you're trying to be very contrarian. Trace has been super efficient and super productive in limited minutes. So if you're looking for a cheap center at 4,800, I don't mind landing on him. Wiggins might get traded. That's the news now. Playing mid-20s minutes, it still just doesn't look great. Same thing with Kuminga, mid-20s. The minutes have just been terrible on all of these guys so far. So they're all risky plays, but they're all coming in at super cheap price tags. I mean, Sarge at 4,200. Looney's all the way down to 3,900. Just wild stuff here happening on the Golden State team. Peyton is officially back, so he might get cracked into the rotation. Just not a lot to like here or you feel safe about besides Steph. maybe Clay, and I do really like Pods. And the rest of the team, it's really just a crapshoot in terms of who you want to get to. So that's kind of the breakdown so far. We do have a good amount of news to kind of wait for, that Luka news and obviously the New York Knicks news. So it's going to be one of those slates where you're going to want to get to at least, I'd say, 2 or 3 New York Knicks and kind of build around there. Then if Luka gets ruled out, you can go to maybe a Dallas guy if you want to, but I'm going to stay away from that. But yeah, really liking Kobe, really liking Tobias, really liking Halliburton. I wouldn't mind switching Halliburton with Steph if you want to get a little bit more contrarian there, and then kind of building around that New York Knicks news. So that's going to be the slate breakdown. Hope you guys like the video. Hit the like button. I'll see you guys next video. Peace.